What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, talking today about Skies of Arcadia, because this is a game that I consider to be one of the most unique and fantastic RPGs ever made, and it's definitely time for a remaster, a remake, or at least a good old-fashioned sequel. In order to properly get into that though, I first need to tell you about this, because I do think that it actually explains why Skies of Arcadia is so special. So this is actually one of the most important items in my life. It's one of the things that I've just randomly discovered that had a tremendous impact on me. There was a day many years ago when I was trying to just walk into a random bookstore and I was very, very depressed. I was just having a bad time in general and things were not going my way. When suddenly, crammed between a couple of the shelves, I saw these words, "Accept your curiosity." And of course, I had to do it. I decided to pick this up and I discovered that what this is not an official item. This wasn't something that was actually being sold by the bookstore, but instead something that had been hidden here by a random person. And inside of it, it's sort of like a journal, except that every page is a different story. There's things in here that are like motivational speeches, movie quotes, random things from religious texts. But every single page is actually its own little story. Every single page is like its own little journey. And because of that, it really filled me with wonder. The idea that somebody would do so much work, possibly hundreds, if not thousands of hours, trying to craft this very unique little gem, only to just set it off into the universe and hope that it lands into somebody's hands. This very much inspired me, and it really reminded me of Skies of Arcadia. Now the reason why is because Skies of Arcadia is a very, very good game because it manages to really kind of encapsulate that sense of wonder, of being lost, of being completely isolated in your own world, even if you happen to be the master of it. This game is absolutely spectacular, and pretty much anybody who's ever played it is going to tell you about why it is just so great. Now to me personally, the reason I like it is that I happen to find it for very, very cheap. Now some of you may know this, but I actually own every single North American Dreamcast game ever produced. It took me 13 years to track them all down, and then, unfortunately, obviously, for part of that, I was homeless, and so when I was living on the street, what I ended up doing is I had to throw away almost all my physical boxes, and I kept everything in this case, or in a backpack, and then in this case when I had a place to go. This is all of the North American Dreamcast games, and right here, alphabetically, if I go into the S's, I can pull out my actual original copy of Skies of Arcadia. It still just makes me feel so teary-eyed when I think about this game, because it is, to me, something that is just so fun to play. This game follows the story of a series of sky pirates and their adventure across the globe, but something that makes this game particularly special is the combat. There are actually two separate ways that you fight during the course of this journey, which is your typical turn-based RPG style, where you're actually on the ground, fighting, using magic, and trying to channel your own spells into enemies of different elemental varieties. There's also some really big and, in my opinion, extremely flashy special moves that let you flip around and chop people up. This alone is really, really fun, but it's actually only half of what makes it so cool. The other aspect of this, when you're not just walking around in dungeons, is the ship-to-ship combat. When you're actually flying around in the skies of Arcadia, you can actually be ambushed by enemy vessels. These are a lot of times the government who are trying to stop these happy sky pirates in their epic quest. And it starts these battles that can sometimes take 20 minutes or half an hour to complete, where you and your opponent take turns trying to basically systematically destroy each other by properly utilizing your fuel and energy to blast them and use up your firepower in an effort to try and sink them. I love this game, but more than anything, I'm so enamored by the mythology of it. Skies of Arcadia is a game that really, really manages to play on different aspects of folklore and legends. I really like the idea that it is this place where every continent is just floating, where there is just so much magic all over the place that people don't even think about it. It is something that feels just as epic as Lord of the Rings in my opinion, except for the fact that it's got airships. It does so much right. But one of the things that always annoyed me about it is how Sega treats it. Now, to give them some credit, initially when this came out back on the Dreamcast, obviously they were having some pretty big problems. I mean, the Dreamcast at the time was a bit of a sinking vessel on its own. They were trying to just get sales numbers up and they were down. So this kind of led to the initial release of Skies of Arcadia selling very, very poorly. In an effort to try and stem this tide and make more money back, they decided to do sort of like well, it feels a little bit like a remake in my opinion, which was Skies of Arcadia Legends. This managed to package together the original Skies of Arcadia plus some additional quests and some extra little things to make it feel a little bit spruced up and released it on the GameCube. This one definitely got more success, but to me, I still like the Dreamcast version better. But among the two of these, there's always been a little bit of an issue of the fact that they are stuck on those consoles. We've never gotten it on the PC, we've never gotten it on Steam, we've never even gotten a version of it just ported to the PlayStation 4. And to me, this is absolutely a loss. Mostly because trying to play this stuff now on a current television is so arduously difficult, and more than anything, it's actually expensive. So obviously, just by looking at my background here, I'm sure you can tell that I am a collector, a very, very hardcore one. But something I do is, not only do I try and track down and beat some of the coolest games ever, I also really try and focus on making sure that I can play them in the absolute most efficient way possible. How can I upscale them and clean them up and make them seem the most modern, even if they happen to be on really, really old school tech? Now this has led me to things like the GCHD, which allows me to play like a lot of the Skies of Arcadia gameplay you're seeing here is actually running on a GameCube going out of HDMI. It also leads me to buying Wavebird controllers, that way I can actually experience these games wireless. These things though cost hundreds of dollars. The average person should not have to pay this. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm glad I have these. This should not be required in order to experience a game as illustrious and really, really fun as Skies of Arcadia. When I was initially playing this game back in 2009 on my little dirty Dreamcast in my little crappy house, I was just having such a blast with it. Having to explore this universe and not even having internet to even look up anything about trying to find my way through this area. It was so confusing. It was so magnificent. I mean, every single boss was being seen with fresh eyes. Every encounter was just seen by my own confused self. The times when you're actually getting to explore the surface of this corrupted world or fight literal gods was just so impressive in a way that I've never seen in any other game. But there's definitely a downside of this, which is that I can tell that as much fun as I had with it, I wish that it was more accessible. It does drive me a little bit nuts when I think about how this game is just so epic, and yet so many people have never heard of it. A question I definitely get the very, very most when people hear my name is DreamcastGuy is a lot of people go, "Oh, so you really like the Dreamcast? What's the best game on it?" And every time I tell them, Skies of Arcadia. Again and again. Yes, there are other fantastic games. I love things like Cannon Spike and Shenmue, and of course Grandia, which I've been playing a bunch of recently. And as I've been playing through these newer remakes of things like Shenmue and of course Grandia, it's hard not to just acknowledge the fact that clearly we're in a space now where this tech is more accessible than ever. Being able to do a remaster is definitely not easy. I'm not pretending that they're just going to flip a switch and instantaneously it pops out. But this is something that will actually be worth it. If you put money into it, you will get it back. But it does unfortunately seem like Sega themselves just isn't interested. Recently, one of the original producers of it even did an interview with Kotaku, and they flat out asked her, "Hey, is there any chance that we're ever actually going to get a Skies of Arcadia 2, or maybe at least a full remake?" And here's her official statement. The original producer of the game, Rieko Kodama, said this: "I personally feel that the GameCube's Skies of Arcadia Legends completed the director's cut to the title, but I am honored when fans of the game who have become game developers themselves express interest in creating a sequel. It makes me happy to think of its legacy being passed on in this way." To me, that sounds like such a conflicting non-answer. That's her trying to be diplomatic and nice, but it's pretty transparent that Sega themselves has basically just moved on from the mere concept of Skies of Arcadia. So here is my very direct plea to them. Just consider it. I'm not saying that we'll be mad if you say no. I will say that we will be a little bit disappointed, but I do hope that we see a lot of success with the Grandia remakes, with the Shenmue remakes, and a lot of times you now get a chance to realize that classic Sega fans are not only out here, we're still spending money. Honestly, this is a profitable endeavor. If you create Skies of Arcadia Remastered and give us a chance to actually experience these journeys once again, it will make you cash. We just want to have these games right here and right now. The hype around even the idea of this is just so fever pitch that I've seen people just trying to create the idea of it. Like my friend on Twitter, NevNeo, she actually photoshopped a Skies of Arcadia Legends icon onto a Nintendo Switch screen just because she's so enamored with the concept of maybe someday getting another chance to play Skies of Arcadia Legends in a more accessible fashion. It's time. You can do it. We've been waiting. Let's make the right thing happen. Put it on Xbox One. Put it on PlayStation 4. Put it on Nintendo Switch. Or at the very least, put it on Steam. Alright, so this has been a very special video to make. I appreciate you watching, especially all the way to the end. Let's get a hashtag going. Let's try and get Skies of Arcadia Remastered going on Twitter, just so hopefully it can get a little bit of attention. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? They say no? Well, at this point, we've been listening to no for a very long time. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. This video, by the way, was very directly inspired by Arlo. Arlo did a big video recently saying we need to get 1000 Year Door, Paper Mario Remastered, and it was great. And I actually asked his permission before I made this video, just so he wouldn't think I'm trying to rip him off. I love you, Arlo. Thank you for the green lights, and thank you everybody who really loves Skies of Arcadia. This game deserves to live again. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.